interim head coach will decide whether or not Eli Manning is going to start this weekend, even though Jordan Renan, our Giants reporter, has already said that he will be back to the starting quarterback. But maybe most importantly, that he did sign off. John Mara did sign off, Lewis, on the decision to have Ben McAdoo present the idea that Eli Manning would start the game and not finish the game. What does that tell you?
Well, I think he also, as soon as he said that, you could see some of the trepidation in his voice that he didn't discuss it and talk it through further as far as, okay, exactly, I may be signing off on going ahead and trying to figure out what else we have on the roster, namely Davis Webb. I don't think they really needed to see what Geno Smith has. I mean,
right. That was the
let's not kid ourselves. I think we know what Geno Smith is, regardless of what his situation was with the Jets. But I think you heard him, you could see in his voice and in his body language that he hadn't talked it through enough. They didn't really have a very solid plan for it. And then when it got bungled, it was almost like, I messed this up. I need to reel this back in real fast here. And now it just accelerated probably what he was already thinking, which was, I'm going to change this anyway. But now that I kind of had a hand in messing that part of it up, I need to erase this right now. I need to start over right now. And look, he's human. He knew that the franchise was changing course. He wanted to know what else was going on with the quarterback position, because as great as Eli has been to this team, maybe they don't think that this is really going to be his last stop. But you have to handle that better. He's kind of admitting that. One thing that I've always liked about some ownership and how John Mara is handling this is you can tell he realizes some mistakes that he's made as far as communication, as far as how he handled the quarterback position, and now he is trying to get it right, and he's trying to go ahead and say, look, when you flatten this thing, you flatten it all. GM and head coach are tied together. I like that philosophy, and we're going to start new, which means philosophically find someone who's going to build the Giants in your vision.
Okay, then the next thing that he said, which was very interesting, he was pressed on why they had decided to fire Ben McAdoo and Jerry Reese when they did, because last week he said he hadn't thought about it. Right. And then he was asked whether or not public reaction had any influence on the decision, and he said no, it did not. What do you guys think of that?
Well, at the
Jeff,
same
you have a wry smile on your face.
But at the same time that he said that, he said he was very aware with some home games on the horizon of what the fan reaction was going to be. And so John Mara and every owner in the National Football League understands that when it's in your own stadium and that's your building and everybody's booing and screaming at the head, it's a bad look and it's a bad experience for everybody that's a part of it. And I think that he understood that wherever he was, if he was okay with letting Ben McAdoo finish out the season, it didn't feel like the fan base was okay with that. And so rather than knowing that you were going to make the move anyway, it was like, you know what, let's at least get everybody on board. Because the one thing about Steve Spagnuolo is actually loved around there. As the defensive coordinator on a team that won their first Super Bowl under Tom Coughlin, they love Spags there. And so I think, in that regard, it's going to be a very different reaction for this team with him leading them out as the head coach.
Yeah, I think fan pressure, I think media pressure, I think all of the above had a major impact on what John Mara believed. I think when he made that call, to Lewis's point, we talked about it even before, when they allowed that to happen, that didn't happen in a vacuum. Mara made the call. It has to go back to him, because you're not going and going to bench your starting two-time Super Bowl MVP quarterback without everybody in the building knowing and signing off on it. That they didn't communicate leads back to the same point we talked about before with McAdoo. He's ill-prepared for the moment. And when you send him out to make a decision and tell everybody what's happening, there wasn't communication between those two, and ultimately it unraveled in a hurry. But he said he didn't think about firing him before this or that week or whatever. I just don't buy that. I mean, or if you didn't have the foresight that this was going to be a major deal throughout the entire media world and football world. I mean, give me a break. You think about the Mannings as a whole, the football family, all the things that go along with that. There was way too much tied into this to think that thing was going to go just under the radar. Everything's going to be okay. The Giants are going to survive this. There's no way McAdoo thought if I bench him, my career in the Giants is going to skyrocket from here. Not a chance. Well, not a chance.
It's like they underestimated the whole thing, Lewis, here. I mean, at one point, to John Mara's point, he said he signed off on the idea. But if you really knew your quarterback, you knew he was never going to be okay.
Never.
Right.
It seems like they under expected everything here.
You think that question, right, is not going to be something that is asked of the incoming GM and head coach. Now, how would you handle a situation like this if you had a franchise quarterback and you knew that maybe you were in a state of transition? How would you handle this transition from a communication perspective? These are the kind of things that really in the GM and the head coach interview process that I think ownership has to make sure that they are prepared to ask. And these are the kind of things that they think about. So when these situations arise, you're just not trying to throw a plan together on the run.
Right.
Because what this sounds like is this is something maybe they never talked about.
Right.
This is something that, hey, look, let's just say that the season starts to go awry. Eli maybe isn't long for New York in our eyes, and we're going to actually start transitioning to a whole new era. How would we handle this? That's the kind of thing you have to talk about in interviews. That's the kind of thing you have to talk about on a daily basis, especially when the season starts spiraling out of control. That's what makes the difference between having a nice, smooth type of transition where the media isn't getting on you and having this, which is us talking about it and going, how did you not anticipate that this would go this way? And these are kind of things you don't expect out of the Giants.
Right.
And that's why it's a big story. Like, how could you not say, you're one of the hallmark franchises, one of the pillars. How did you not think of this, that it would go this bad?
I would say this, having been there and seeing, seeing John Mara interact with people, like, he did spend a lot of time with Jerry Reese. And he wouldn't necessarily spend a ton of time with the head coach. And he wouldn't get involved in really too much with a certain individual player. And so I could see this being one of these scenarios where it's like, you can see the fact that, like, you'd have to make this decision during the season.
Yeah, to your point that you and Jeff both brought up, the idea that 3 of their final 4 games are at home. Just remember, they went to Oakland on Sunday, and there was a sizable group of Giant fans in the stands in Oakland wearing Eli Manning jerseys, screaming, "That's my quarterback." Okay, that was in L.A. I mean, not L.A. That was in California, in Oakland. Imagine that scenario had it played out if they kept going down this road at MetLife for 3 of the final 4 games. Let's go back to Adam Schefter and Chris Mortensen. Guys, there is a lot of work now that the Giants have to do. And Adam, I thought it was interesting that John Mara did not say unequivocally, we wouldn't hire a general manager before the season is over if the right guy is available. So they're starting to look at 2018 as of right now.
Yeah, one thing there, Trey, we heard him say they're turning to former general manager Ernie Accorsi to lead this GM search. And Ernie served for 10 years up to 2007, and laid the foundation for those Super Bowl runs under Tom Coughlin. And Ernie has helped the Lions, the Bears, the Panthers in their GM searches. And he wants, Mara said, the traditional GM coach role, unless somebody exceptional comes along, a coach who would have those type of skills. And let's face it, he's talking about Bill Belichick type of skills. So I also thought it was significant, too, that Mara said, hey, he told the organization he doesn't want to hear any talk about tanking. We're out to win these final games.
The other thing, listen, they've got to wait until the end of the season to hire a GM unless it's somebody that's free. A guy that's free right now is a guy like John Dorsey, the former Chiefs general manager, who's from the Connecticut area, who probably wouldn't mind being back on the East Coast. It's a name that I'm sure will be connected at some point in time. But the fact of the matter is that's why Ernie Accorsi is there, as Mort said, to help and guide the Giants in ways that he has helped and guided other teams in the past. But teams in season would be hesitant about granting permission to interview GM candidates while the season is going on. The interview period typically begins at the end of the regular season, Trey. It would be highly unusual, if not impossible, to conduct some of those interviews with some of those GM candidates that the Giants would like while the regular season is unfolding.
Okay, so with that in mind, guys, when do you expect this process to really begin?
Well, it begins now. But the fact of the matter is, oftentimes when you see teams make drastic changes, it is inevitable that it's going to leak into the postseason. In other words, if the Giants were to fill these jobs before the start of the year, it would be shocking. You're looking, they will have the opportunity to move quickly, and a week or two after the regular season ends would be, I think, a realistic time frame to think they could get these positions filled.
And that's the one thing that Ernie Accorsi has served with other teams, but also is on an advisory committee, and they have names. They vet a lot of these candidates, so they have a list already, and they'll certainly work through that list.
All right, Mort, Adam, thanks very much. We will see how this story continues to unfold over the final quarter of the NFL's regular season. Jordan Renan, our Giants beat reporter, is already reporting that the Giants will go back to Eli Manning. You heard John Mara, the president and CEO of the team, say that will be Steve Spagnuolo's decision. Jeff, I'll start with you. Eli Manning, the starting quarterback this week, yes or no?
If he accepts it, that's the part for me. They'll ask him. It'll be surprising to me what he decides to do now. I think it's all in Eli's camp. It's his decision.
Tim?
I don't think there's any question Eli starts this week. Spags has a history with him, has been around him enough to appreciate him in the way that many guys that were teammates of Eli's appreciate him. And I think that Spags will understand that it could change things for him if they go on a little bit of run and play well here. It changes things drastically for Spags, who's been a head coach before and it didn't work out. I think it's an easy decision for him, and I think Eli wants to get back on the field.
Yeah, I totally agree that Spags' relationship with Eli is obviously important, and there's never a consensus on a coaching staff anyway in a situation like that. I guarantee you it wasn't all the coaches sitting there going, we need to put Geno Smith in there.
Yeah.
But I do think it's crucial that really, even though Mr. Mara made the point that Spags needs to make this decision, he has to be involved in that decision. He has to use that as a way to kind of make it right.
All right, we'll see what happens going forward.